IBC's first fight had come on June 15, 1949. The mob delivered on its promise to Jake LaMotta, and that night, LaMotta beat Marcel Cerdan for the middleweight crown. A week later, Ezzard Charles outpointed Jersey Joe Walcott to win Joe Louis's vacant title. The IBC had locked up boxing's two most lucrative belts, with Frankie Carbo controlling the other weight divisions.
The mob made life difficult for Carmen because they couldn't control him. They didn't want him to win.
But Basilio was winning, so much so that he became a star attraction on Ray Arcel's Saturday night fight card.
Ray Arcel gave a lot of fighters an opportunity. Ray was never an enemy in the sense that we worked together. He had some opponents among some of the other elements, but not ever with us.
Arcel had hoped to televise a non-title bout between Basilio and reigning welterweight champion Kid Gavilan. But John DeJohn wanted a title fight for Basilio and dove into the belly of the beast to get one.
I went to New York. I know where Carbo hung around. If you went to Carbo and you told him a story, he didn't promise you nothing. But a week or two later, you got what you asked for. Got a call to meet Jim Norris down in New York. She went down and I saw Jim Norris. So Jim Norris says, what's this? You want to make a fight up in Syracuse with Gavilan and Basilio? What kind of money can you draw up there with it? I said, that fight there, being conservative, I think we'll do $75,000.
Norris liked what he heard and outbid Ray Arcel for the fight. Basilio now had his first big break, a shot at Gavilan's welterweight title.
And I thought I won the fight, but they gave in the decision. At least I won the respect of the people that didn't give me a chance before.
It kind of surprised everybody when he put him down.
That same month, boxing was in for an even bigger surprise, only this one occurred outside the ring. The victim was Ray Arcel.
He was standing in front of a hotel in Boston, and all of a sudden he was hit from behind apparently by a lead pipe.
They wanted to send a message to people that wanted to buck the IBC and the underworld that if you got in our way, you were going to get hurt.
He just thought it wasn't worth it after that to stay in boxing, that he would be a target again.
The Saturday night fights went off the air and Ray Arcel disappeared from boxing for 18 years. Carbo's stranglehold on the sport was as solid as a ring post, and Carmen Basilio was headed straight for it.
I think boxing is the swill barrel of sports. It's a dirty racket in many instances, and that's the way it's going to be. As long as a hoodlum figures he can make a buck by muscling into it.
I had to hang around till June of 1955 before I got another shot at the welterweight championship.
First of all, if you're a real good fighter, the word gets around pretty quickly, and most people don't want to fight you. And some of the real good fighters who might have had connections or controls, their managers or the people in control didn't want them to fight Basilio.
Basilio had no connections. He didn't want to be one of Frankie Carbo's fighters. He knew how things worked, how Carbo was pulling strings on his puppet managers, guys like Blinky Palermo, Rip Valenti, Jaime Wallman, and Bernie Glickman.
You can go on and on and on. People just fronting for Carbo.
Because he had the one conviction for homicide. He couldn't get a license in his own name to manage fighters anymore.
What Carbo was interested in was controlling you as a fighter. The only way you can get a championship fight is to sign a personal service contract with Carbo, which means if you win, then Carbo will receive percentages of all of your championship fights. If you lose, it doesn't matter because he already receives percentages from the person who defeated you.
Under Carbo's control, Kid Gavilan held the welterweight title for almost 5 years. But by 1954, he was showing signs of wear and tear, and the mob found new blood in Johnny Saxton.
Carbo had, in essence, both fighters, Saxton and Gavilan. It was a god-awful fight, and the decision was given to Saxton.
With the advent of Sports Illustrated in the mid-50s, boxing became a weekly target of crusading journalists. The daily press, on the other hand, seemed to fall into two camps.
You wouldn't believe how many sports writers would besieged with gifts, quote, unquote, at Christmas time or Some would get a handout every week.
These regular beat writers would line up at the Garden after every Friday night fight and then would receive handouts and cash.
One day, LaMotta went down to the boxing commission to try to get his license back. So as we came out, LaMotta was with Al Silvani, who was then representing him. And Al Silvani said, no, just a minute, Bill. I said, what? And he stuck out this $20 bill. He said, Jake wants you to have it. I said, you tell Jake. And I said, no, I'll tell Jake. I said, let me tell you something, Jake. I'm insulted. I'm insulted for two reasons. Number one, you try to buy me, and number two, you try to buy me for $20.
Of the writers who could not be bought, none put up a more vigorous or more eloquent attack on the mob in boxing than Dan Parker.
For the whole decade of the 1950s, Dan Parker crusaded week after week against these gangsters.
Dan Parker was the person directly responsible for the Gabe Genovese case, the first case of a manager being convicted of undercover managing.
Carmen Basilio's managers knew what Genovese could do for their fighter. What they didn't know was how Carmen would respond.
Johnny came to me when I was the #1 welterweight, and he says, I'm going to have to hook up with the mob in order for you to get a championship fight.
I had to satisfy people, otherwise I wouldn't have got nothing.
He said, you're going to have to give up some of your percentage of your pay. I said, no way. I'll get my shot, whether I give it to them or not, and I'm not giving it to them. He said, well, you're never going to get a shot. I said, well, time will tell. And I refused to give anything up. Now, whether they did or not, that's their business. I don't know.
Genevieve's done a service for me, and I paid him.
Now that his managers had taken in Genovese, Basilio was in the mix. He was part of a round robin with Johnny Saxton and Tony DeMarco, who were set to meet for the welterweight crown.
A jolting left hook spins Saxton sideways. DeMarco then pours 17 straight punches to the champion's head.
He hit that poor Saxton, and he got caught in the ropes in the corner. He couldn't go down. And DeMarco hit him, I don't know how many shots. Like he was hitting the speed bag. Bang, bang, bang.
My fighting since I was like 11 years old, boys clubs, and always dreaming to be a champion, always dreaming to be a professional fighter, and now I'm a champion.
A couple days after this tremendous upset victory, DeMarco says, my left hand is still sore, I can't fight.
But DeMarco had signed a contract. His manager, Rip Valenti, made sure he kept up his end of the bargain, and in 70 days he was to meet Basilio for the title.
They couldn't deny me. They had to give me a title fight eventually. I was confident that I would win the title, but it wasn't easy.
June 10, 1955, Carmen Basilio challenges Tony DeMarco for the welterweight championship of the world.
It was a savage fight. Absolutely savage. It was just a pure 6 brawl.
It was a tough fight, hard. He had knocked me down once.
Champion goes down.
I just couldn't lay back and let him set the pace. I had to keep forcing him, make him move, make him work. Eventually, it caught up with him. I ran him out of gas, and I started nailing him.
The challenger, Basilio, is ripping into him with all he's got. That's all. The referee stops the fight at 1 minute and 52 seconds of the 12th round. Carmen Basilio wins the welterweight championship of the world.
He said, I'll never forget it. I just cried in the corner. I did it, I did it, I did it, he said. And his mother climbed into the ring, and she kissed her son.
I was afraid she'd get hurt. Trip coming through the ropes or something, because she's such a short little thing. She's only 4'10".
She explained to me, she said, you know, we worked so hard. I said, what dreams did you have? She said, we had no dreams. What could we dream about the way we lived? And that was behind that embracing scene when he won the title.
After the DeMarco fight, they started to refer to Basilio as the man of courage.
Well, he's a champion of the world climber, right? So Brinky's after me. He wants a Saxton fight now, see? Because round robin, see? So I'm down in New York with Gabe Genovese, and we're in a Gallagher Steakhouse. We're having dinner there. Blinky's there. So Blinky's going, well, come on, Pally, what are you going to do here? What are we going to do? Well, he goes, I'll tell you what. We'll take $10,000 off the gate. See, I'm learning now, understand? We'll give it to you, and we'll go in Boston and fight Tony DeMarco. We'll have a sellout over there. We'll all make money. Yeah, that's a good idea. He said, all right. So that's how we got the second fight in Boston.
A 15-round World's Welterweight Championship bout, matched by the International Boxing Club, James D. Norris, president, between the champion, Carmen Basilio of Canastota, New York, and the challenger, Tony DeMarco of Boston, Massachusetts. 30 seconds to go in the seventh round, and a smacking left hook, and Carmen Basilio's knees are of rubber. DeMarco trying to put across the big one.
He staggered me in the seventh round with a good left hook. I saw that punch coming from a mile away, never made an attempt to block it or get out of the way.
I hit him flush. His eyes rolled over his head and his knees crossed, and I waited for him to go down. He didn't go down.
I just said, don't go down, don't go down. You're in Boston. If you go down, they'll stop the fight without even counting. And I just fought it and moved and moved and moved, and then I just worked my way around. So the bell rang, I just turned around and sat down. I was in my own corner.
Basilio regained his senses and took control, flooring DeMarco twice and finally draining the life out of him.
This fight a duplicate of the one last June the 10th, as Carmen Basilio smashes Tony DeMarco into a helpless condition to have the fight called to a halt in the 12th round on a TKO.
The winner and still welterweight champion of the world, Carmen Basilio.
Now that DeMarco had lost twice to Basilio, it was Johnny Saxton's turn to take his shot.
Carmen was offered the chance to fight Saxton in Chicago. There was no clause in it for a rematch. So I think really reluctantly, he went to Chicago to fight Saxton.
I was never comfortable in Chicago.
On fight night, Basilio was a 2-to-1 favorite, but referee Frank Gilmer reminded him of why Chicago wasn't his kind of town.
He wouldn't let me fight inside where I was strongest, and he let Saxton do the running to keep us apart. And then in the fourth round, he come out, and the stuffing was coming out of his glove.
Saxton's glove got ripped after Carmen really hurt him, and for some reason they couldn't find another glove for 15 or 20 minutes.
When he recovered and ran like a deer for the rest of the fight, there was a little hanky-pank going on in that deal.
The judge's decision goes to Johnny Saxton.
I remember him telling me that he left Chicago with a broken heart.
Back in New York, Basilio secured a rematch. Behind the scenes, the usual greasing of the palms took place when Gabe Genovese collected from Basilio's managers and from the fight's promoter, Norm Rothschild.
Most boxing experts agree that Basilio's biggest asset is his excellent physical condition.
Still bitter from his defeat, Basilio trained harder than ever. This time out against Saxton, he would leave no doubt about the winner. Basilio had mended his broken heart, taking back the title from Saxton and the mob. Jim Norris made a mint on the fight, but his control over boxing was about to crack.